And we're live.
And we're live. Sorry about that. We had technical difficulties. Well, I had technical difficulties.
I hope everyone's doing good tonight.
Yeah,
It's been a minute.
it has been. When was the last time we streamed?
Jeez, I don't even know now, to be honest. I think it was like almost 3 weeks ago.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah, it's been a while.
I think because I just saw you the other day, so I feel like, I don't know, like maybe I thought I was like, oh yeah, we streamed, but no, it was just us meeting up. So
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you everybody that showed up today to hear us just chat. It looks like we have Good Mother, JR, Bandit, the Gray Ghost, and yeah, awesome. So thank you, everybody. Oh, I keep on trying to get Good Mother to debate me about labels. You know, like labels that you put on like your things, like for your pantry and all that.
Labels?
Yeah, because labels are life. I told you like my pantry or like my laundry room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like those labels, because she showed me her tea set, and I was like, well, how do you know what tea's and where? And she's like, well, I put it in there, and I was like, yeah, but it'd look so much nicer if there was like labels on there. So we need to put labels. And I
Yeah.
sent her a thing on Etsy. I was like, here you go, order these. But anyways, though, our conversation today. I know, Harley, this was something that you really wanted to talk about, and I think it's a great topic. Did you want to kind of tell everybody what we're going to be discussing?
So today we're going to be talking about the mind, the body, and the spirit, and kind of tying it into feminism. And it's sort of like a self-care aspect of it because, cleanliness and hygiene is an important aspect of of being feminine. But I'm choking over here, excuse me. Um but it goes a lot further than just simply like, like physical hygiene. There's also kind of keeping your mind kind of clean and clear of certain things, and
Mm-hmm.
also taking care of your spirit as well, and taking care of your body and everything else. So that's kind of what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, well, I also, on top of the idea of hygiene for, again, not just your physical, your mental, emotional, but I'm also just for anybody else who's interested, I'm also going to bring in the spiritual as well. Before we do start all that though, when we had our conversation with Bandit, which was that 2 streams ago? 2, maybe?
I think
2?
that was about a couple streams ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple though. Um, but I think we had a really good discussion. And then he said if we had any questions, we could just go ahead and message him. So I went ahead and I did. And because we were talking about, for women and what women should look out for. So my question to him was, what should women look out for in regards to red flags in men? And I think that he actually gave a really good answer. And I think it actually ties into the topic today of quote unquote hygiene. And again, that's the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health of women. And I'll read his response though. He stated, so red flags a woman needs to worry about in a man. First off, women suffer more for making bad decisions. They can get pregnant, they can be abused, or they can have their reputation destroyed. So knowing this, vetting becomes the most important thing. Women are judged by what men they can lock down, so pick wisely. I would keep an eye out for these things. How does the man treat people he may deem less than him, like wait staff at a restaurant? Does he have a temper? How does he handle stress? How is he with kids? How is he with making decisions? How is he with positions of power? Do your values match? Do your principles match? Do your ethics match? Your religion? Does he want kids? Do your life goals match? Is he caring? Does he inspire you? Does he make you want to sacrifice for him? Does he share your education level? Do you make more than him? Does he have more girlfriends, there's space in between girl and friends, than boyfriends? Friends, not dates. He asks, well, does he gossip? Does he respect authority? Does he show compassion, strength, virtue, and commitment? You need to test him to show him his character. Does his work balance, life balance match what kind of lifestyle you want? If you want a rich one, he may not be home much, if at all. What are you compromising to get him, and will you accept that without holding it against him? Resentment kills. And he also says, what are his boundaries? What are yours? How's communication between you two? Things like that. And I think that plays into the idea, though, of the hygiene. And I think when we were talking about as well in our conversation, Harley, I wanted to say, like, I think this really kind of rounds out our previous conversations on commitment, on submission, on femininity, and how these are just all interlinked. And that because we know that when a woman takes care of herself and she knows her worth and her value, and I think all of that will focus on her commitment. And I think that when we obviously take care of ourselves, our worth and our value and what we put out there in the world towards other people, especially towards the men in our lives, obviously that creates the healthy home life overall. So Harley, did you want to, I know you wrote down some topics and everything else that you want to discuss. Did you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I guess the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on was talking about kind of, physical health. Obviously maintaining good hygiene. And I think kind of when it comes to hygiene, I feel like there are some, I wouldn't say misconceptions, but I feel like there are, I guess what some people would call like high maintenance women, where like they kind of have to go like, I guess you could say like above and beyond what they really need to, because like there are some things that having good hygiene and then being high maintenance are kind of like two different things.
Yeah.
So like having good hygiene is just simply like, just taking care of yourself and like, take a shower every day, at least once a day. Wash your hair, keep it clean, keep it maintained, free of tangles. Don't be like me in high school and butcher your hair every other week. Don't constantly, putting a bunch of dyes in it, at least like harmful dyes, bleaching the crap out of your hair, things like that. But, keep your nails clean, keep your face clean. And when it comes to doing those things, like I know for me, especially as like a teenager, that aspect of my life was like really frustrating early on, especially when it came to like the facial cleaning, because I mean acne it can be a sign of many different things, but one of the biggest things that it probably is just the fact that like your face is getting oily, it's getting greasy, and it needs to be cleaned. And I like had a really hard time finding facial cleaners, like finding ones that my skin didn't break out more to. And everyone's different, so what might work for one person might not work for another person. And it's just kind of a trial and error thing that you just have to keep, working at. keeping your nails clean. Like, I am obsessive about keeping my nails clean. Like, I
Mhm.
can't stand to have things under my nails. Um, keeping your nails trimmed, keeping them clean, keeping them even. Um, when it comes to like your hair and stuff, just keeping it like maintained, not having it in knots and stuff, like the buns, the hair buns that most girls do.
You just called me out.
Well, the thing about the hair buns though is that there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. Like, if you do it the wrong way, it'll actually damage your hair more.
Yeah.
Um, using scrunchies instead of like the really small hair ties.
Yeah, I haven't used those since I was like in middle school.
I have a hard time with the little smaller hair ties because I break them all the time because of how thick my hair is. They just keep breaking.
Mm.
Um, I kind of went off on a rant a little bit.
Um,
But yeah, maintaining good physical hygiene, like shaving, wearing deodorant, perfume, honestly, I feel like isn't really necessary, but if you wear it, keep in mind that it's meant to be discovered, not announced. So if you walk into a room and everybody can smell that stuff immediately, even if they're 10 feet away from you, you're wearing way too much.
yeah. And one thing too, though, I've always done is either my husband buys it for me because then he picks out a scent that he really enjoys, or obviously I go with him too to make sure it smells good on me. Um, or I just drag him along with me and then have him smell everything in the store for me. So, um, but I think though too though to tie that all in though, um, for a lot of women, because then you have women that obviously do too much and then they don't they don't look like who they are in regards to, putting too much stuff on. And then you have women who don't do enough. But I think though, for us, at least from our conversations, when we take care of ourselves, we can also better take care of our families and we can take care of those around us. Um, and I think that's really the the core of you know where we're getting at, because and also too, like if we take care of ourselves, we have that higher self-esteem and that that self-worth that that doesn't come from other people trying to build us up. It comes from ourselves, which means that we have a less likely chance of being influenced by outsiders, if you will, where we are only influenced by those who love us and ourselves.
Right, having good hygiene like really helps can really help you both mentally and emotionally.
Mhm.
Because like having, whether you're take showers in the morning or at night, having those showers are just like kind of a either a relief at the end of the day, or they're kind of to help you wake up and start your day. Like, I feel like a lot of people kind of underestimate when it comes to taking a shower or a bath, um kind of the influence and power that can kind of have on you both mentally and physically.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, for the obviously that's going then into from moving from the physical then, how do you think though that helps a feminine woman mentally and emotionally as well when she takes care of herself like that?
Well, for me, like, I know it helps to kind of just give you time to kind of like think about your day and what you kind of went through, especially like if you had a really stressful day, just kind of allow you to have time to yourself to wind down, think about things a little bit more clearly, because it just allows you to just like have that time to yourself and to care for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
allow you to have some appreciation for yourself, and to kind of give you time to really like pay attention to you for a moment, where it's like at the moment in time when you're taking your shower or whatever, it gives you time to kind of focus on yourself in that moment. And I think that's like really important, especially when you have a husband and when you have kids. You pretty much spend your entire day, focused on them, focused on the house, focused on your job, focused on everything but yourself. But then whenever you get to have that time to have, your shower or whatever, that's the time when you get to focus on you.
Mm-hmm. And that's important, of course, obviously for your for a woman's mental health as well, where she can like I was listening to Caleb today, and the radio host, she was talking about how when she was a child and she got on the plane, like how like when they do the safety check, as you're heading down the runway.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought up like as a child, she always got so angry when she would hear, in case of emergencies, parents put your own mask on first, then help your children. And she said that she never understood that as a child. And then when she became a mother, she said that it really finally dawned on her that, she cannot truly help her children, or she cannot truly help her husband. She cannot help those in her community unless she's also well herself. And I think that is, something, she was bringing up, for, um, you know, as a mother and as a wife first, that was something that was almost profound for her, because she's like, well, my husband and children come first. And she goes, well, we also have to make sure that we're healthy and we're right and we take care of ourselves too. And I think that's a vital part of everything.
Yeah, it really is. Like it just gives you that time to where you just have time to focus on yourself and be with
Mhm.
yourself, and really be able to kind of de-stress and kind of think about things that happened during the day, or happened the night before. Because like, I mean, I'm a nighttime shower person, so I like to shower before I go to bed.
Mhm.
But I know some people do it in the mornings, like before they start their day.
Mhm.
So, but for me, I know like at the end of the day before I go to bed, having that shower is really helpful, because it just allows me to take time to just kind of think about myself for a little bit, and
Mhm.
it's it's funny because some people might say that's kind of like maybe a little bit egotistical or kind of self-centered sort of, but not, like, yes and no. Like, there's kind of a balance between you have to think about yourself
Mhm.
and your self-care, but you don't want to put yourself necessarily completely in front of everyone else all the time. Like,
Correct.
there's kind of times and places to where you can put yourself first before others. It's like a balance. It's a balance, essentially. Like, you
Mhm.
have to be able to know how to balance being able to care for yourself and putting yourself first, while also making sure that the others around you are also being cared for.
Yeah, like the idea you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
So, yeah, understandable. Um, I do agree with that, absolutely, and I've seen it, like from my own mom. There's times where I remember as children, she was just constantly anything that my dad needed, anything that we needed, she was like, you know, always always giving us, everything that we could ever need. Um, and I remember, different times where my dad would, tell her like, honey, go put your feet up, take a break. You need a moment. Go. I got the kids. Um, it's usually with him like, kids, go play outside. Like, go away. But like there was that moment too of, you know, I got to see that throughout my parents' marriage, where my mom is just, always was like, well, I gotta take care of your father, I gotta take care of you kids. Um, and then my dad would have to literally tell her, stop for a second, we're okay, you need to take a break. Um, but I think, and I see that with like my sister, who's also a mother, um, as well, that there's, I think for a lot of obviously mothers who find the joy in being mothers, a lot of times, they want to put everything above them first, because I think for the good women out there,
Yeah, like
that's what they care
there's
about doing.
yeah, like it is like because it is important to make sure that you are also taking care of yourself because you can get burnout. You can get burned out if you're,
Hmm.
constantly doing something, whether it's from you can get burnout from work, you can get burnout at home, like you can
Hmm.
get burned out on a lot of things. And so sometimes it's important to, recognize that and say, hey, like this is I'm starting to get burned out on this. Like I need some help. And
Hmm.
especially in today's society, I feel like it's a lot harder for some women because especially some mothers because some of them have a hard time wanting to reach out because I mean as mothers, good mothers,
Yeah, we
you know,
were just saying
we
good mothers.
constantly, constantly want to, put yourself, you know, you want to be the one that wants to care for your kids, provide for your kids all the time. And sometimes reaching out and asking for help, you kind of feel guilty because you feel like you're not doing enough by doing that. Does that kind
Hmm.
of make sense?
Yeah.
And so, but it's an important thing to do, especially because, especially like if you're a new mother and you just had a newborn baby,
Hmm.
newborn babies are a lot. They are so much. Like that first month is the hardest whenever it comes to newborn babies because they constantly need you like 24/7. You hardly get to sleep, you hardly get to eat, you hardly get any time to yourself. But that's why it's really important to have people close to you that you can trust, that you can reach out to say, hey, like,
Hmm.
I need help. Like sometimes you need to reach out for help so then you can kind of have a bit of that break because, postpartum depression, like
Hmm.
that is a scary thing. Like
Yep.
there's different degrees to it, but
Yep.
sometimes it can just be where you're having a hard time having a connection with your child because you're constantly feeling burdened by them. And so it kind of hurts the relationship that you're having with them. And sometimes it can go to extreme levels where women have taken their children's lives.
Hmm.
So that is part of the reason why taking care of yourself both physically and mentally, taking time to do that for yourself is really important because it can have a really damaging effect on you later on down the line if you don't. And sometimes you might need to reach out for help in order to have that time for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is one thing that we have lost, though, in our society though is that women used to coach each other, who used to help each other, um, through this process. And now, like I can go back to like my grandmother era. She had her first kid in 57. No, yeah, 56 or 57, my uncle. And she had other women that were, not only other women, but also her own mother. Um, and, they helped teach her everything that she needed. They helped her with resting and everything else. And I feel like with modern society as well, you may find that in some families or in some groups, but overall, though, you typically do not hear about that very often anymore. Um, so I think that's something that we have lost as a society overall with, you know, um, I want to call it like the boss lady, if you want to call them that, mentality that has come forward. Um, I can
Yeah.
do it all. It's like, no, no, you don't want to, trust me, and you can't. So I'm sorry.
I mean, you shouldn't have to do it all by yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, there's really no reason to. Like, why would you do everything yourself when you can build a system in place to where you don't have to bear everything by yourself. That's part of having, fathers in the home, is to, help you with some of those burdens.
Hmm. Yep. I agree. I agree. Did you have um other I know this was something we were both kind of like iffy on, like how are we going to do this topic? Because we know what we want to talk about, but how do we get the words out?
Yeah,
Um,
'cause it can, like, some aspects of it can come across as kind of like egotistical or kind of
yeah.
self-centered, but
Yeah.
I think it's like I was saying earlier, it's kind of a balance. Like,
Hmm.
you don't want to be too self-centered, but you also don't want to be too too neglecting of yourself. I know there's a word for it, but I can't think of it. But you
That
don't want to
word.
constantly be like sacrificial either.
Hmm.
Because if you are in a state where you're having a hard time caring for yourself, or you're not able to care for yourself, it's going to make it extremely difficult for you to be able to care for others. And
Hmm.
so it's a really important balance to have, to where you do kind of have to have that sense of selfishness a little bit,
Hmm.
but at the same time, you also have to be willing to give some things up for yourself in order to um, help others.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously, if we only focus on ourselves 100% of the time, we would classify that as selfish behavior. But I think though that sometimes I think as a whole, not just us, but as a whole society, I think we need to move away from the idea of that when we do take time for ourselves, that it may, like we always say, oh, it may be a little selfish of me, but I'm going to take that moment for myself. And, um, I think as I think we kind of need, as a society, I think we need to move away from that at least some, because when we do take care of ourselves, um, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we are better equipped at helping people. And I don't think that makes us selfish when we do that. Of course, obviously, if we only focus on ourselves, that's what makes us selfish. But I think that there's always that balance that we always need to have. Um, so that way we don't get burned out. We don't get because and people tend, we do run into users, and users, of course, they will take and take and take, and they'll drain people. And I think that, just taking care of ourselves, setting those healthy boundaries, if you will, I think is vital for, um, going back to our topic, our hygiene, if you will, our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual hygiene. Um, so that way, like mentioned, we cannot pour from an empty cup. We have to be able to have something in our cup to be able to give to others. Um, I think it's vital for us.
Yeah, it definitely is, because I mean the last thing that you want is to put yourself in a state to where you are so drained both physically and mentally that you are unable to be
Mm-hmm.
able to provide the support for your family that you both want and need to do. And I think there are some women out there who have a hard time when they get to that point admitting that they're at that point and wanting to reach out for help so
Mm-hmm.
then they can get back on track,
Yep.
because life happens. Like, there's a number of things that could happen in life where you're not able to take that time for yourself for a while. And sometimes, like I said, you kind of have to be able to reach out to the people around you, reaching out to your significant other, reaching out to you know family. Like, that's family, like the family aspect, I feel like is something that, especially like my generation and the generations after me, have really moved away from. Because I know for like my parents and my grandparents, like when they talked about family, like they like all they were all in the same household, or they all lived within like the same neighborhood of each other. Like, they were all very close. Like, my most of my aunts and uncles lived within like the same neighborhood or right next door to us when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, and I don't know if it has to do with like the age of the internet or what really like caused it to change. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's like most people, at least for me and a lot of the people that I know, most of our family members, they live really far away, or we don't really have contact with them anymore.
Right.
So I feel like when it comes to the aspect of family, like it's not as strong like that. I'm trying to think of like how to explain it, but it's like it's not as important or put first as it used to be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now most families, like, they don't live next door to their parents anymore. They don't live within the same neighborhood as their families do. Like, they don't all live in the same neighborhood. Some live, states away. Like, most
Mm-hmm.
of my family are all in totally different states. Like, they're way
Yeah.
far away from me. Um, but then there's other aspects where it's like my husband's family, like the part of his family that he's really close with, like they all actually moved to be closer to him. So I guess it just has to do with like the different types of families or different
Mm-hmm.
aspects. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure, but I know, like, for me and my family, like, my family is, like, spread out everywhere. I don't even know where
Mm-hmm.
half of them are. Like, they're just they're everywhere. Um, but I don't know, like, because there were a lot of kids that I remember, like, when I went to school with them, and even, like, now as adults, some of the other people I know, like, they maybe talk to their parents, like, once every few months or maybe like twice a year or something. Like, they don't have that close of a relationship, especially when it comes to like their extended family,
Mm-hmm.
like their in-laws or their aunts, their uncles, their cousins. Like, a lot of, like, I don't even know most of my cousins.
Mm-hmm.
I only know like 3 or 4 of them. I know I have way more, but I don't even know most of my family, or like some of the people that I remember growing up. I haven't seen them in over like 10 years and
Right.
I have no idea where they are now. So it's just I feel like that's a part of the problem that we're having as well in our society is that family is not as close knit or as taken seriously or given priority as it used to. I mean, just a generation before me was totally different than my generation.
Right. Well, I mean, and we can easily go back in history and we can kind of start pinpointing when the breakdown of the nuclear family started happening. And we can the clear cut answer is obviously when feminism started taking control and divorces started becoming rampant, fathers started getting kicked out of the homes because when you don't have the quote unquote that protector of the family obviously starts falling apart, and you don't have people that have strong familial bonds because of that. I think that you know we can pinpoint when that starts happening in society. And most people now have families that are, where, like you said, like they can spend months without talking to each other, and that's heartbreaking. I mean, if I go like a day and a half without texting or my mom or something, I get a phone call. What's wrong? Like, why didn't you say hello to me? Like, like that is, um, something that I think we have definitely lost. But I think that we can pinpoint when that started happening as a whole in society. Um, but and I do want to sorry, I have been kind of reading the chat though, everybody. I apologize. I've been listening to Harley too. Um, but Mita Outlaw does say a family promotes unity, bonds, strength, and there's a reason why family has been attacked from all angles in our society. Um, and to tie that, I think, in with our topic too, Harley, is that you know for because we're coming at it from from the women's perspective of this, that when we do take that time to take care of ourselves, we can better take care of our husbands, whatever our children that God gives to us, we can provide, take care of them as well. But it, like you said though, it all starts with, taking that time for ourselves too. And, you know, like you said, like you like taking your showers at night because it gives you that, I can let things go for the day now. Um, at least that's like, that's definitely what I got. But being able to have that moment and just relax and let any of the stress, because also too, if we don't, as a woman, um if we don't if we don't take care of ourselves mentally and emotionally and physically too, you know that can come out and go. We can start, you know verbally attacking our spouse, because we're so frustrated and angry that we start lashing out at them. And obviously that creates that creates turmoil, and that creates hostility, and that starts breaking down a relationship, a marriage, a family. And so I think it's really vital for us to take that time. And um,
Yeah.
I take it as almost like a way of healing. um,
Yeah, kind of like for me, like, because I know for me personally, and I think this is like a kind of another aspect too, is also knowing like the kind of person that you are. Um, and because I mean, not everyone's perfect, people have their flaws. And I'm one of those people that sometimes, whenever I hear something or when certain things happen, I might
mhm,
kind of jump the gun on it a little bit. Like I might kind of start, jump like making assumptions,
yeah.
um, kind of jumping to conclusions a little too quickly. And so being able to have the time to myself at the end of the day
Mhm,
allows me to kind of really think about those things and kind of like assess like how I might approach something and kind of be able to take the time to like really think about it.
Mhm.
And so then that way I don't end up, you know, making a fool of myself. I can really take the time to kind of sit there and think about it and just not really like dwell on it, but just kind of take the time to I guess like assess the situation and what had happened, and like could there have been like a better way I could have handled that, or like, maybe I took what he said a little too personally, or
Mhm.
maybe I'm getting too thinking too deep about it, like so being able to have the time to myself is important because it allows me to kind of think about the things that happened in my day and kind of be able to clear my mind and kind of have like a nice a reset, especially before going to bed, because
Yeah.
going to bed whenever you're like really upset or angry or
Oh.
sad, like this, you're not going to be able to get a good night's sleep. And then on top of that, then you're going to wake up the next day and then you're going to feel like crap because you're super tired. And so that's why having that self-care time
Yeah.
is important, because if you
Yeah.
don't do that, like it can end up kind of causing mischief or headaches in
Yep.
other areas.
Yep. And one thing I've learned, at least in my marriage, there's just certain times of the month where you're just everything bothers you. And I started like, because my husband would either tell me, go take your happy pills, which is Pamprin, um, or I had to start saying, like, I have this saying now where depending on how I am, I'm like, I tell him, so that way I don't snap at him because I don't obviously he's not making me angry. I'm just hormonal. And I tell him, I'm like, look, I don't like me right now. So why don't we just not talk for a moment and I'll come to you when I'm good. He's like, okay, fair enough. And that's
Yeah.
definitely, he's like, go read a book. Like, that's what he tells me. He's like, because that's my happy place. He's like, go read a book. He goes, go on a walk, go do something. He goes, go find your happy place. And he goes, and once you've calmed down and chilled, he goes, we can talk about our day or whatever. But I've had to literally just say that, like I don't really like me right now. So I need that moment alone. I need to be alone right now.
Sometimes you
Um,
just need a break. Like
yeah.
you really do. Like I mean, especially like because I don't I wouldn't say it's a misconception, but I would say probably with a lot of younger women who haven't been in long-term relationships before kind of don't realize that
Mhm.
there are going to be times, because relationships are work, and there's going to be times where you just need a break. Like it could just be, because I mean, especially when you're around somebody every single day for
Mhm.
like several years, there's times after a while where you're just like, I need a break from this person. Like I love this person to death, but I need a break. Like I need a minute. Cuz
Well, yeah. I think that becomes so, being married 13 years now. One thing my husband and I have always, we just kind of fell into it, I think, just naturally, if you will, is that because of my husband, he is an introvert, like to the T. So he always needs his time alone, always. And he doesn't like, I'm happy just being in the room with him. That's like, I'm just happy being in the room with him. And then like, like we'll chat here and there. But he always needs his time. And I think for a lot of couples, at least when they're starting out, um, at least what I've noticed from others is that they latch onto each other so much where they don't allow each other that form of, you know, independence, if you will, where it's okay if he does his thing without you. It's okay if you can do your hobby without him. You guys, it's okay to have hobbies that you both enjoy where, you can simply cheer the other one on where you don't have to participate with them. And I think that that does help though with that, you know, because you are around each other, you are around each other quite a bit, obviously, especially if you're married in a relationship, whatever. Um, so I think that that's a healthy dynamic. I think a lot of couples, at least from my experience, what I've witnessed, seem to struggle with, where they think that they have to do every little thing together. Because I remember you and I, we were just chatting the other day about, we can't, you can't take your fiance to the grocery store. I cannot take my husband to the grocery store. It's just, we spend too much money because he just puts everything in the cart and it's not on my list, and I'm a list person and you do not go off the list. Like, don't do that. Um,
Yeah, like we
you
just
know?
we have our own things, and
Yeah.
sometimes,
Um,
it's okay if you can't do those things with them. Like like I mean, I'll still, like, if he wants to go and he wants me to go with him, I'll go with
yeah.
him. But, you know, there are also times where it's like, especially if I'm trying to do like our main grocery shopping and I'm not just grabbing like a couple things, but I'm trying to grab like like a bigger, I guess, like a bulk trip or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
I might go by myself just because my my fiance likes to run away. So,
Yes.
and then
And
I'm
both of
stuck,
our husbands
once I
do
get
that.
everything, I'm stuck having to run around the store looking for him. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like,
Like, yeah, I mean, and I think that's something though too though, going back to our topic though too though of, taking that time, taking care of yourself, that I think that that can go into, like, for instance, one of my favorite hobbies is reading, which is obviously a pretty solitary, hobby. Um, but like if I find something, depending on what I'm reading, if I find something that I think my husband would be interested in hearing, or something that I thought was maybe really cool, or maybe the author explained something a different way that I thought was just really interesting, I'll share it with him. Um, but I think though, having that time to yourself just to even regroup, um, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, is vital. And we can say not even just for women, but obviously also for men too. Obviously, though, we're talking about this from the woman's perspective, but we can also say obviously for men as well. And I think that a lot of couples should be able to, um, should adopt that if they haven't already, um, into
I
that.
know you
So,
had mentioned something that I had said before
mm,
about when I mentioned the fact that when I get up in the morning, the first thing that I'll do is I'll look at myself in the mirror.
right, I remember that.
And part of the reason why I started, well, the reason why I started doing that was because growing up, I had really low self esteem. And so I started doing that as a way to kind of help start kind of building my self-esteem kind of back up, because and it's one of those tricky things, because it's like you don't want to have a false vision of yourself, but at the same time you also don't want to have a negative perception of yourself either.
Hmm.
And I started doing that as just a way to kind of be able, especially when it comes to like self care and stuff, taking the
Right.
time to actually look at myself in the mirror. And I would pick out things that I liked about myself, but they were things that I physically couldn't change.
Hmm.
Like, because I mean, if you don't like your hair, you can always change your hairstyle. You know, and things like that. But I wanted to start actually taking the time to look at myself and to just see the person that I was, instead of constantly having a negative perception of myself. And I mean, there's some mornings I get up and I look in the mirror and I'm just like, hey, my face is glowing this morning. I like that. Or there's times I get up and I look in the mirror and I'm like, my hair is an absolute mess. Like, I must have slept crazy last night. you know, but I just started doing that as a way to kind of, and this probably, I mean, I don't, this probably wouldn't work for everyone, but I just started doing it as a way to kind of have a bit of admiration for myself and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that, I'm not I'm not as ugly as I like to think that I am. I'm not. Like I'm not like Beyonce level, but I'm not hideous either. Like I would start pointing out features on myself in order to, I guess it's just how my mind works, but pointing out my physical features to myself and just kind of starting to admire those things about myself because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the money to go and have complete facial reconstruction. I just don't, and I'm
Oh
probably
my God.
never going to. And so
You
being
do
able to
that,
take the time
yeah.
to take those things and admire them, I felt like was kind of important, and I made that as kind of part of my self-care routine
Mm-hmm.
in the mornings, before, when I get up and I look at myself in the mirror before I start like doing my hair or, brushing my teeth and washing my face and all that other stuff. Like as I'm doing those things, I just kind of take that time to just point out things about myself, like, hey, my skin is like really glowing right now, like it's not super beet red, or hey, my freckles are sticking out, or the other, like literally yesterday when we were outside talking, I ended up getting sunburn on my
Oh
face,
my
and
God.
my face got sunburned because I burn
I
really
got you to
easy.
see.
Um, but it was funny because then I got up and I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw, like, because it's funny because it's like my nose and then the right top part of my cheeks underneath my eyes were all that were sunburned.
Oh
But I
God.
was looking at it and I was like, that's kind of cute. Like, I kind of like how that looks. Like, I know it's summer and it's not good and I need to, put some aloe vera
Um,
on that, but it's kind of cute. Like,
you're both
just
so pale.
but just taking the time to just do that, it really helped to kind of boost my self-confidence and to kind of have a bit of admiration for myself, because you don't want to be like completely to the point where it's like you think that you're something that you're not. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to sit here and say that I'm beyond, like I'm a 10 out of 10 like Beyonce level kind of beauty, because I know I'm not. I'm way, but I also know that I'm not hideous. Like, I'm not
No, you
a
are not.
gremlin, like
I think you're beautiful, and I've even told you that. I was like, I mean, I think you are. But I just think that's really funny that we both got sunburned.
I literally didn't even know until I got up that morning either. I had no idea until I
Yeah.
got up and I looked in the mirror and I saw it and I was like, "Oh no."
Just for the chat, I think we were outside chatting, talking. Like, was it right after lunch? I think.
Yeah, we were outside for almost like an hour.
Now we're just chatting, but man, we're both really pale. um, but yeah, so no, I think though, the what you do for yourself though too, though, I think for, that's a mental and emotional thing for sure to, you know, to build yourself up. And I was actually reading, and a couple of the guys even mentioned, they struggle with low self-esteem as well. Looks like MGTOW Outlaw said it. Um, Bandit even said it as well. Um, and I think that's something that, um, I think most people can definitely, you know, understand that as well. I mean, I've struggled with self-esteem issues as well. Um, because for me, we're both, you and I are both pretty short. But like whenever we see everything that's always promoted, it's always these really tall, lanky women. And it's like, yeah, I got some short legs. Like this, that's not gonna happen. And so that's always something I think that you know most people, men and women, I think, will have some type of issues with their self-esteem, but I think it's important, I think, to talk about it. And like you said, like, you take that moment every single day and you kind of give yourself 2 thumbs up in the mirror and you go on with your day. And I think that that's healthy and that's smart to do. And I wish more people, men and women, would do that. But yeah, sorry. I'm just still laughing though. We both got sunburned.
Yeah, like I seriously had no idea until I got up and I saw it in the mirror and I was like, it's kind of cute, but I'm sunburned. And the funny thing is that when I sunburn there on my face, because I do have freckles on my face,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't really come out unless they are exposed to the sun. So when I start to get sunburned on my face is when the freckles on my face really start to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which is something that, like, I like the freckles on my face. I think they're really cute, but I just hate the fact that I have to burn my face in order to get them to show. Like, I don't know why that's a thing. It's kind of annoying, but so yeah, my freckles have started to come through now, and so
There
yeah.
you go. There you go. Well, to I guess to kind of that kind of segues for me. If you don't mind, I wanted to talk about, because we talked about, of course, some physical, of course, mental, emotional, and then I wanted to also discuss the spiritual side as well. If you're cool with moving on to that one for the next moment.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So hi, Johnny. And then also I wanted to also say hi to, it looks like Hermit joined our chat. And I did read as well, just to another segue, if you will. I know the Gray Ghost is new. And Good Mother mentioned that he should talk to us. And I did see that he did say that the kinds of questions he would want answered are the kind that honest people will lie to themselves about. And I encourage him, if he ever does want to have a conversation with us, I'm an open book. I know that a lot of times, and I know Harley, you are too. And I think that if people may not always like our answers, but I will be honest about them. So if he ever does, I know that's something you and I will always be honest and open with someone.
Yeah,
so
like
I just wanted to extend that.
I'm good to have some open conversations. Now, of course, I do have, like, we have some limits about some conversations that we won't have for reasons.
Yeah,
but
yeah, obviously we will not be talking about like sexual things or anything like that. But pretty much almost anything else will.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some open conversations with some other streamers before. I mean, not like the sexual aspect, but just like other things. I think one of them, the last one that I had, was with SKC actually, and that conversation just got weird. But I mean, it was still fun, but it was kind of weird.
Yeah, and there's just certain topics, just because you are engaged, I'm a married woman. There's obviously certain topics that we just will not discuss. But other than that, though, I'm pretty much an open book on that. Other than that, but I wanted to put that out there. If he ever is interested, I know you and I will always be happy to talk to anybody. But going though to the topic though as well. Sorry, Hermit. I'm also a woman. Anyways, going to the topic though is the spiritual. And I found this quote the other day, that I thought would kind of tie in to our conversation. And it said, the world has enough women who can do their hair and adorn themselves with makeup, jewels, and fancy clothes. It needs more women who know how to do hard and holy things. And that's what kind of brought me into the spiritual aspect of it as well, is because, you know, when we talk about people taking care of themselves, usually we talk about the physical aspects, or just making sure. And obviously those things are important because we do want to make sure that we do take care of ourselves physically, that we are healthy, because again, like we've mentioned multiple times already, that when we are healthy, when we are happy, that obviously translates into our relationships, with our spouse, with children, with those around us. And I think coming from a Christian perspective as well is that we also have to, there's that fourth part of it where we also take care of our spiritual side. And so we always hear about a Proverbs 31 woman, which I can always read that scripture verse. I think it's probably the most popular one when they talk about godly women. And I think one of the ones that is not really always talked about is actually a Titus 2 woman. And I just wanted to read that. And it's actually the title, I guess, of that scripture area is actually called Christian Behavior. And it actually talks about men and women and how we should conduct ourselves. And I think this also ties into our mental emotional hygiene, if you will, as well. Hey, SE. But it is Titus chapter 2, and it's verses 1 through 8. And it says, as for yourself, you must say what is consistent with sound doctrine. Namely, the older men should be temperate, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, love, and endurance. Similarly, older women should be reverent in their behavior, not slanderous, not addicted to drink, teaching what is good, so that they may train younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, chaste, good homemakers, under the control of their husbands, so that the word of God may not be discredited. Urge the younger men similarly to control themselves, showing yourselves as a model of good deeds in every respect, with integrity in your teaching, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be criticized, so that the opponent will be put to shame without anything bad to say about us. And I don't know, when I was looking up about taking care of oneself, on the spiritual aspect, is that, it does tell us, that we should watch our behavior, that we should be keeping with holiness, that we should not have not do any type of false accusations against others, that we should be a teacher of good things, a keeper of the home, lovers of our husbands, our children, and obedience. And I remember a lot of our conversations that, I felt like you have also expressed obviously similar beliefs as this as well. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah.
No. So, but when we were just talking about this, and when you asked me if I was going to bring in some scripture, and I was like, do you mind? Like, I'm happy to. If you want me to, I'll do it. But that was one of the things that really stood out to me in that, is because we, to be able to have that healthy aspect as well. And I think coming from a Christian, anybody else who is a Christian, or religious, it doesn't have to be Christian, obviously, but or religious in general, that when we also take care of our spiritual aspect on top of our physical, mental, and emotional, that that is where we can give the best of ourselves to other people, to our spouse, to our children, to our friends. And then also too, I think it ties in as well to the self-esteem aspect, um, because one of the biggest things I've always been told as well is that my self-worth and the self-worth of other people is not found from other people. It's found in ourselves by what God has given us. And so that is something I think that is always kind of tied in. And then on top of it as well, for as Christians, we are called to take care of our bodies because our bodies are a temple. And so it kind of just all ties into, I guess, the hygiene aspect of, we have to be of sound mind. We have to be take care of our physical aspects as well, so that way we can help as many people as we can overall, and love the people that we love. I don't want to get too much into it because I know some people are like, I don't want to be too biblical, but that was something though that I thought would really kind of tie into the conversation overall.
Yeah, I think honestly, like, I mean, I'm not really like a religious person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think that at least when it comes to different religions and different religious texts, and even from, history, that they do have, at least for me anyways, that they do, I would say they really have an influence, but I would say that they do allow me to have insight into certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Um because I don't know, to me it's interesting, looking at the different, especially when it comes to like a history aspect.
Mm-hmm.
um you can definitely learn a lot about different, cultures and different societies and stuff in history through religious texts, and how a lot of them came to be what they are today. And
Right.
um yeah, I think like for me it's like I enjoy, like, because I have, me personally, like I have a collection of like different types of religious texts and scripts and books and stuff. Like I don't have everything, but I do have some, and I like to look into them because I mean there's some aspects of them like I might not agree with, that I don't follow, but there's
Mm-hmm.
some of them that I do, and I think a lot of them help to teach important lessons to be able to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Um so yeah, um I would say, like, for me, when it comes to like a spiritual aspect, let's see if I can explain this in a way that would make sense. Especially since, I'm a non-religious person. When it comes to a spiritual aspect, it's, for me, it's something that is important, that kind of ties into a mental aspect as
Mm-hmm.
well, because there are some things that I can't really explain. Like, I just can't put it into words. But there are just some things where there are times, because I'm a pretty introvert person myself, and
Right.
there are times when I know that I need to do or expose myself to certain things to kind of help, you know, raise my spirit a little bit. Like taking a time to go out to a park or like a national forest or whatever, and just go walking through the woods and kind of exposing myself to nature. Or, walking down the street in the middle of fall, and, the air is like just the right temperature. There's a certain smell, the wind's blowing a certain way, you're hearing certain sounds, and it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's like something inside, like it changes something inside you. And, or if you like smell, or you're in a certain place that like kind of reminds you of something from your childhood. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like spirituality is kind of a hard thing to put into words because it's not something physical. Like you can't really physically describe it because it's not a physical thing. So it's like I don't know, it's kind of hard. Um like your for me personally, spirituality or taking care of my spirit is something it's I have a hard time putting it into words, okay? Like it's hard to explain because it's unique to everyone and it's different to everybody. And so for me personally, like it ties in a lot to kind of my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um but it's at the same time it's weird because it's like it's not the same thing. It's different. Um I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna sound like a psychopath or a weirdo. Um, but essentially, like for me, I guess I would say like the best way I could explain my spirituality is kind of like a separate entity from myself. I guess like it's like a because it's like there's my physical self and then there's my spiritual self, which is kind of like separate from me. Which I guess some people would say is like multiple personality disorder, but it's not like a different personality. It's just it's a non like physical aspect of myself. Like I said, I sound like a total weirdo trying to explain this.
Some people, a lot of people actually, they do have a difficult time explaining either their their faith, um, or their spirituality, quote unquote, their faith spirituality, because for a lot of people as well, it should be as well. And I don't like saying the I have a thing with the whole personal relationship thing. I just have a thing with that. But but you always hear people always say, I have a personal relationship with yeah, like okay. But anyways though, I'm not gonna get into that one because I don't want to start any religious issues. But spirituality it does obviously come across or it is a very personal thing at the end of the day. And um that can be for people for any faith. Just because I'm Catholic and obviously I have a Catholic family, um, each one of us is going to experience our faith differently. We obviously share a common belief, a common understanding that we all agree to, but we are also going to have those different experiences with that faith. Um, so I think I wouldn't say it's like I don't know if I would call that for like a split personality or bipolar or anything like that. I think that it's I think for a lot of people, and you can correct me if this is wrong or if I'm misspeaking on your behalf, but I think sometimes a lot of people they compartmentalize a lot of their beliefs or how they want. So like they have a compartment for their emotional, they have a compartment for their mental, their physical, their spiritual, instead of combining everything all together as one entity, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but I think because also when they talk about spirituality, it also leads to a certain level of vulnerability in them, maybe. So
Yeah,
I think
like
that's the time a
it's
lot of people would try to put it like as a separate part of themselves.
yeah, like you're physical health and your mental well-being and your spirituality all kind of tie hand in hand. And like when it
Mhm.
comes to physical and mental health, it's a lot easier to be able to kind of recognize and separate those things. Spirituality kind of ties into both of those.
Mhm.
So spirituality is like a hard thing to separate from those because spirituality goes in like it involves both of those things. Like having like what people would say like a broken spirit is like
Mhm.
it's not necessarily that like you're some people will try to say, oh, well, it's like a mental issue or, oh, they're physically sick or something. But having a broken spirit isn't really either one of those things because having a strong spirit allows you to have it kind of affects your outlook on life and
Mhm.
how you go through life. And when you have a strong spirit, you tend to be a lot more optimistic about a lot of things.
Yep.
Versus if you have kind of a broken spirit, you are a bit more like pessimistic. Um,
I'd agree with that.
and it really ties into to both of those, which is why it's important to take care of yourself both physically and mentally and your spirit because they all go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Um, because if you don't take care of one, you're gonna neglect the others.
Yep.
And so you can't really just take care of one and not take care of the others because if you take care of yourself mentally but not physically, then you're not really going to be able to take care of yourself mentally. You might think that you are, but you're not.
Right.
Um,
And they're all connected too. Like for um like obviously just physically, let's just say obviously when I work out, I feel better mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When I when I pray, obviously I feel better also, not just spiritually, but mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. And obviously when we take care like to me, I they're all connected for me. When one starts falling, it starts trickling into the other areas. And that's when I know I need to step up my game and I need to get back on track. Like something like I'm letting something drop here and I need to pick that back up and I need to keep going. Um, so that's how come like when you mentioned this topic, because to me, like they're all interconnected. Everything for that for me is all interconnected. And I think for a lot of people, it definitely is too, like you said. Um, like if we don't take care of our body, but we're definitely, we're thinking we're taking care of our mental health, but when we discard the body, the physical health, you know, how well are we really truly taking care of ourselves at that point? We're not. We're if we neglect something, it's going to come back and bite us in the butt. It's going to come back always.
yeah, definitely. It does, what goes around comes around.
It does. It does. And actually, um, one of the um, scripture verses actually I had written down because I told you I was like, oh, I found, I grabbed 10 scripture verses just just to grab them. I was like, oh, these are all related to them. Um, but about the our bodies though, and let me see which one. I have them all written down. Distance ourselves from the defilement of body. One of the ones I did find was Romans 12, verse 1. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. And it, it brings into the aspect that, you know, our bodies are at least from the Christian side, we are a living sacrifice. That we have to take care of ourselves. We have to because we're literally presenting ourselves to God every day. And we are, I actually read a quote the other day. It said that people don't hate Christ, they hate what people present as Christ, aka they hate how Christians come across as Christ. And so it's the idea that, again, going back to that of when we are also, because you said too, like when our spirits are whole, we're happier people, we're better people. And I think that kind of just, it all kind of ties in together, at least for me, from the spiritual aspect, and the physical, mental, emotional, um, that, that when we just take care of ourselves, when we what's the word I'm looking for? Um, when we watch our behaviors, when we take that time in the morning, to, look over ourselves and say something that we love about ourselves, like what you do. Um, when we take that time to have that moment to ourselves, like for me, like reading a book, um, or like you, like also going on like walks, going into nature, working out, praying, doing any of those types of things that will make us, and going back to our key word that we used, that is what keeps our hygiene, you know, in good standing, if you will, where people do want to be around us. And I hate to use like the quote, but it's like also too, like you know, when we're not healthy, there's people typically also don't want to be around us because we have a tendency of dragging other people down too. And so I think, taking care of that hygiene, that physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it also, I think that draws people to us as well. And I think as women, when we want to help other women who are starting relationships or in marriages themselves, and maybe they're struggling, if we are also healthy and our marriages are healthy, our relationships are healthy, then we can also now be that guiding light that provide that guidance to those other women, so that way they can also now prepare a healthy home and take care of themselves, so that way they can take care of their spouse and their children as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, at least for me personally, I come from a broken home. And
Mhm.
so there were and are still some aspects that I still kind of struggle with, that I'm still getting used to. Because when it came to like the self care aspect, when I was younger and I was like starting to bloom, I guess you could say. There's a bunch of different terms for it, but essentially, when I started to coming into my age, um, early on, it was hard for me because, you know, especially during that time, I was growing up a in a single father home,
Mhm.
and my dad, he he didn't really know anything about that stuff. Like, he didn't even know how to maintain my hair. I mean, my dad would literally shave my head and give me a rat tail. Like, I don't know if you know what a rat tail is, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was bad. Um, but I mean, like, I still love my dad to death, but yeah, he had no idea. Um,
Oh, you poor thing.
but when it came to that time in my life, it was really hard for me because I didn't really have any women in my life to really turn to really learn a lot of that stuff from. So for me, like early on in my life, it was really hard because it was like, coming into that age, it's like, started developing, started having, my cycle and everything. And it's like,
Mhm.
It was funny because at that age, that early on, because I wasn't really being, I wouldn't say that, like, I guess not really being taught, but it was more so just, I also didn't have that influence in my life to where it was just kind of like I didn't really care, and I didn't really care for myself the way that I should have been early on in my life. And it it did come to bite me in the ass later on. But I think, like, for me personally, it just, I do understand and recognize that there are some women out there who come from broken homes like I did, where
Mm-hmm.
they never, like, they want to make that turnaround to change their life, but they just don't know who to really turn to do that, because
Right.
unfortunately there's a lot of women in society that, aren't feminine women, who aren't able to help them teach those things and help them to turn that stuff around.
Yep.
um and it's a bit of a struggle for them, and some of them, to them, it's normal when it's not, or they don't understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't I don't want to get too detailed or too graphic for both YouTube and other people, not wanting to disturb them. But I think that there are some aspects, especially when it comes to women's physical health, that just aren't, women just aren't being educated on.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to things like their cycles, or when it comes to things like, dealing with, I mean, not all women have this problem. There are some flat chested women, but those who aren't flat chested, there are some things you should probably know, like knowing the proper type of bras to wear, and
Yep.
how to, because they do have their own self-care. They do have their own things that need to be done to make sure that they're being taken care of properly.
Because if
Knowing,
not, then you get back pain.
yeah, you end up,
Lots
kind of
of
like me,
lots
having
of
shoulder and neck problems.
Mhm. Yep.
um having, lopsidedness. Like, there's a lot of things. It's
Mhm.
complicated. It's complicated. um
And that I remember that's something though that you and I were discussing though too though. Obviously not in this stream, but we wanted to talk about um for women, probably the boys or the gentlemen probably will not want to join that stream or listen to it. But, women's menstrual health and taking care of yourself. Because that's something like you said, a lot of women sadly did not grow up with that or don't know really where to go, and all they're told is, pop a pill. Um,
yeah, like,
mm,
it's,
so
and I mean, for, like, me personally, especially, like, even, like, when it comes to things like the birth control aspect and the pregnancy aspect, and, the sex aspect of things,
mhm,
which, I mean, that's a tricky thing to get into, at least on YouTube. You have to, like, word things kind of weird. Like, I know
yeah.
how to do it. It's just complicated, and I
Yeah,
hate
you always
doing
have to
it because
you gotta think
YouTube's
about the
like,
certain
"Ugh,"
words. Yeah,
about it.
I get
But
you.
but I do think that there are definitely some things, some aspects when it comes to, like, physical care and health, that a lot of women, especially young women, and even women who are my age or older than me, just were not taught that's really important. Like, there were a lot of things that I know now that I wish I would have known that when I was younger. And I'm not, like, I don't blame my dad for me not knowing those things, because I mean, he didn't know those things. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
expect him to know those things. But I do kind of wish I would have had some female influence around that time to kind of help teach me that stuff, because then when I did have women coming into my life, there were some things that they taught me that were good, and then there were some things that were not so good. And I think
Mhm.
part of that is due to misconceptions and lack of communication, and also just influence from society, bad influence from society.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you want to get into that on this stream or if you want to save that for another stream for later.
Probably for the other one, just so that way we can keep it all centralized, if you will. I think that's my OCD kicking in.
Okay.
Centralize that one. I do want to just say the Great Ghost was heading out, so I just wanted to thank him for stopping by. Again, the invitation's open if he does want to uh, talk to us. I know Harley and I were, again, obviously there's a few topics where we're just like, obviously because married woman, engaged woman, so there's just certain topics. But other than that, though, we're pretty open. Um, and he's a different label. Yeah, he probably does. But yeah, going off of that though, yeah, I would say probably that'd be just a different stream, just so that way we can also too we can give a warning before
Yeah.
before we go into that, because I know like I wanted to talk about natural family planning, um, and women learning their bodies and their cycles and all that. So I think that's probably a topic
Yeah.
that we'll have to go into, and then probably the gentleman may not be wanting to listen on that one. I don't know, maybe they will. Um,
I mean, they could, I mean, if they want to, they can, because I mean,
yeah,
I'm not, like, we're not going to go like super graphic,
no.
but I think there are some things in there, like, especially, like, honestly, I feel like it's good if you have, especially like if you have daughters or
Hmm.
if you have wives and stuff like that. I think some of that stuff is just good to know to keep in mind to at least
Hmm.
kind of be able to understand it a little bit,
Hmm.
because like I said, in my situation, like I wasn't taught that stuff because my dad didn't know anything about that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
he gave me a freaking rat tail, so like, when it came to being a girl or a woman, my dad had no clue. So
Oh, oh dear. Oh, now it's like, I just am picturing.
I do have pictures of it. I do.
Okay, you'll have to send me send me those on Discord or on Wednesday. Bring them on your phone, like something. Just you have to show me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but but yeah. So I think though for this topic, just anybody who's still listening, but um, oh, that's it. Sorry, I just read. Bandit asked a good question. He says, or asks, bleh, bleh, bleh. He asks, how does a guy comment on a girl's hygiene when it's bad without being accused of date grape or worse if we damage her ego? Um, so that one is, that one I'd say is even hard for a lot of times for women, unless of course we really know the person. I actually worked with another woman who was rather overweight, but she did not believe in wearing deodorants because she thought it caused cancer, but then she smoked cigarettes. So she
Oof.
was a lovely little walking contradiction right there. Um, but um, but it actually got so it was to the point where you couldn't walk past where she worked because it just smelled so badly, and um, it was just bad. We actually ended up having to get management involved to talk to her, and so management, to kind of include everybody, wrote an email saying that we do ask everybody keep up with daily hygiene in
Hmm.
the office. Um,
I would say that, so from a girl's perspective, when it comes to girls, girls tend to be a lot more discreet when it comes to stuff like that. So for instance, like especially like for instance, if we, because I've had this happen to me before, unfortunately, and this has also happened to a couple of other women that I've known, mostly like in early middle school, high school. But um, typically, like if you know have an accident where you're in the middle of class and your cycle starts, or you know you maybe were in a rush and when you put your deodorant on, like a friend of mine has done this where she put on her deodorant but her undershirt she still had, because she would wear tank tops underneath her shirts. um,
Mm.
we would usually have to change clothes for gym class, and she put on her deodorant but she was tired that morning and forgot about her tank top underneath. So when we went to gym and she like took her top off, there was deodorant all down the side of her tank top. But when things like that and stuff like that happened, we're typically like a lot more discreet about it. Like we'll just kind of try to keep it between us.
Mhm.
Just kind of be like, hey, I can smell you from like on the other side of the hallway. Like, do you need some deodorant? Or hey, I noticed you got a spot on your pants. Like, do you need some products? Like, like we girls tend to be a lot more discreet about it because I mean, it's embarrassing, like it's an embarrassing thing, and I don't think it's not necessarily a bad thing to point it out, but I think it's that you don't necessarily like want to make it public.
I think so from a guy's perspective though, like he does mention like for office dynamics, that is really rough. Um, Sadly because of the current cultural climate we are in, even if I would say as a guy, um, that's a really tough spot to be in because if you do say anything, then she can automatically go to HR, she can, file complaints, et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, it's more so of if you have management. One of the things that I actually did to my coworker was I was a little passive aggressive about it, but I started spraying body spray all over my office, like my cubicle area. And then when she wasn't in her cubicle, I'd spray her cubicle down. And then she would be like, "What is like?" She's like, "I can't stand smells. Like, what? This is so hard for me." And I'd be like, "I think it smells great. Maybe we should add more."
If it
Um,
comes, like, I know
but
he was mentioning about the woman having bad breath in the office, like,
mhm.
you could do something as simple as, like, hey, you want some gum?
Yeah,
You
like
know?
I've pulled out my mints and I popped a few in my
Right.
mouth, and then I usually like offer to everybody around me, "Does anybody want any mints?" And I usually like shake it like like a little treat. I'm like, "Here you go. Anybody want any mints?" I
Right.
think
You
though
want some mints?
yeah,
Or,
I think for hygiene, I think for men and women, um, that can definitely be. I mean, sometimes depending on like obviously like if you ate something, your breath can smell for that. Um, but usually most workplaces do require a certain level of hygiene that has to be kept. Um, but most places, well, like my husband used to play Magic the Gathering, and when we go to Friday Night Magics, like they would actually have signs posted all over the place.
oh
You
my
must
god, wait,
shower,
your
put in
husband
deodorant.
plays Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, he used to.
Oh my god,
Uh,
we play Magic the Gathering.
oh, you do? Do you want any? Because we have literally a
Oh my god, no.
40-pound tub
My fiance
of
has an ungodly amount, like
of
so bad.
Yeah, so Anyway, so but like I mean, if you've ever been to any, Friday Night Magic, I've never ever go to Warhammer stuff. Oh my gosh, no. Mm-mm. But if you any type of like Magic the Gathering, Warhammer, any places that host like D&D, they actually put signs up and asking the people, make sure like you have to bathe, you have to put on deodorant, you have to brush your teeth. And they have these, like, even if you go to conventions, they'll put them up on the convention. Yes, I've been to conventions too, Magic the Gathering. Yes, I have. So they put them up all over, like before you walk in, and then they're posted all around the rooms. But most places, I would say for Bandit, um, they do require a certain level of hygiene. Now, of course, if it's a one-off, like their breath is bad one time, um, obviously that's just something. But if it's a constant thing, um, then if you have like a supervisor or management, usually that's the best route to go. That's the route I went, um, especially if they're dealing with with either clients or customers. Then that's actually can put a quote unquote a bad taste in the client or customer's mouth of dealing with a company if someone doesn't keep their hygiene up. So my recommendation would just simply be going to management or asking HR if they could send out. You don't have to specify who it is. You can just say that there has been uh, some strong scents in the office. Could you address this? And then a lot of times, most places will. I've personally never had an issue with them addressing that, but again, I don't know what kind of office you're working in. I don't know all of that, but if you understand the dynamics and they're as long as you don't specify a certain individual, a lot of places will send out an email just reminding people, please make sure you keep up on your hygiene.
Yeah,
I
I
think that
mean,
would probably be the best thing.
personally, for me, I mean, like I said, like if someone's like, because there's a difference between, being kind of like rude about it
Mm-hmm.
and being kind of just discreet about it. Like for me personally, I think most women prefer kind of the discreet route. Like if
Yeah.
kind of, if you're either alone with them or just kind of like speak in like a low tone and just be like, hey, I can kind of, smell whatever's on your breath. Do you like want some gum? Do you want some mints or something? Or, just being polite about it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because it's like, it's hard to like be
It
polite
is.
about it, but there's also like, there's a rude aspect of it, like if you, walk up and are just like, oh my God, your breath stinks, like so people might get kind of upset, kind of hurt by that. But if you're kind of discreet about it, just kind of like, hey, do you want some gum? Or like, hey, like I can, kind of smell you. Do you want some body spray? Like, I know, well, typically guys aren't like as prepared as women are. Like, I know, like, typically for me, I usually will have like some gum, I'll have like a little thing of body spray or some hand sanitizer and stuff like that with me usually, just in case, because sometimes it gets hot and you start sweating, and so you want to freshen up a bit, or you went out for lunch and you had some like garlic noodles or something, and so you need some gum, like
Yeah. I think, yeah, like I said, like if it's a one-off, that's obviously really different. If it's an everyday thing, um, then that's typically something um, that should be at least addressed with management of some sort. Um, Bandit does say though, guys aren't really good with discreet stuff. Most of them use blunt force. Um, like he says, like, hey, and he says the B word, but your breath stinks. Here's mouthwash. Get a shower. Everyone's sick of wearing sunglasses because their eyes are watering. Obviously, there's a certain level of professionalism. I've had to deal with students who, you know, should have been wearing deodorant, but mom and dad hadn't gotten it for him yet. So that's, certain topics that, you can pull children aside, or you can talk to their parents when you meet them outside and all that. But yeah, I'm honestly, when it comes to the work aspect, you do have to have a certain level of, like Harley says, you do have to be a little bit more discreet on that one. Unless, of course, like when my husband was active duty military, they would just yell it across at each other, like "you stink." And obviously they use different words. Um, and Harley probably tests with this her fiance. Like they'll tell each other how bad they are.
Yeah, like,
Um,
I mean, I know with guys, like, guys are, they're pretty open about that stuff. Like, if they see something like that, they'll just be like, "You stink, bro," you know?
I mean, I'd say, yeah. I mean,
Versus
and
girls are just kind of like, hey, I got some deodorant in my gym bag. Do you
yeah. Do
want
you want some?
some? Like, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're a professional. Um, yeah, you're a professional. Just, I would say, definitely take that on a professional level. And he does ask which one is worse, do men that have bad hygiene or girls? Honestly, I have been in a room with over 100 soldiers after 30 days in the field, and because I was picking up my husband, and I will say that during certain times of the month, women still smell worse than what I've smelled with guys being in the field for 30 days without showering and only being able to use baby wipes.
I mean,
So,
I would say that when it comes to like hygiene in general, I would say it's worse for women than it is for men,
yeah.
mainly because of the fact that when women have bad hygiene, it can actually create really bad infections and diseases that could kill us. Versus
Mhm.
with guys, they might, they smell bad, but they're not necessarily at the risk of possibly dying from having bad hygiene. They'll mostly just smell bad. Like they might get some infections, but not
Yeah.
anything typically that's life threatening. Versus with women, when they have bad hygiene, yeah, you can actually develop infections that can kill you from bad hygiene.
Yeah.
So I would say it's definitely worse when girls have bad hygiene than guys. And um at least like I guess kind of going into my woman brain, um is that typically like especially when a guy's after they've been like working really hard or whatever, and they kind of smell. um I don't know, I like as a woman, like obviously if it's like there's a limit and there's certain situations, but typically like if a guy comes home from work and he's been working his ass off all day, like my husband or whatever, and he kind of smells because his deodorant wore off or whatever, um I kind of like it. Because
They smell good.
it means he's been working hard, and we kind of find that attractive. But
It it does. It's like and I don't mean this in like a nasty sense, because I know exactly what you're talking about, Harley. It's like that nice musky smell, not the.
yeah, not
It's
from
that
like
nice
he's been
musky smell where
sitting
you're just
all
like
day
you
on
just
the
like
couch
kind of like
doing
want to pull him
nothing
to you
and
and
he
smell him a little bit.
smells.
Yeah.
But he's been like at work working his ass off, coming home, and he smells like,
Hmm.
especially like he's been mowing the grass, so he comes in and he smells like the grass outside, or he's been working on the car, so he smells like grease. Like I don't know, like any other time that stuff would be like ew, but when it's on him and it's because he's been working hard, it's like that smells really good. But
Hmm. I totally understand. I agree. I agree with you, Harley. It's that smell that that your man will get, like when they've been like I remember like when my husband, because obviously right now, obviously his job isn't, he's in IT now, but when he was active duty military, and they'd be out there for hours and hours and hours, and he'd be like, man, he goes, it's like, he goes, I was sweating all day and everything, and I'd be like, oh, you smell good to me. Like, I don't know why, you do, you smell great to me, but obviously you need to take a shower. Um but like that, it is that, I don't really know how to describe it. It's a really nice musky scent. And you said, like, you're right, there's a limit, of course. I have smelled things where I'm like, nope, like your clothes need to be burned. But yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, what I would say between men and women, it's definitely worse when women have bad hygiene because,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that women are definitely on that one. But
And as far as that being like motivation enough for women to have good hygiene,
mhm,
surprisingly, surprisingly, a lot of women don't know that. They don't know that they can develop infections that could literally destroy their lives. Like, it's funny because there was a TikTok video a couple weeks ago that I saw of a great example of this where a woman developed a yeast infection. She didn't get it treated, and it got to the point where it spread
mhm,
into her uterus and into
yep,
her ovaries, and her ovaries had to be removed.
yep,
So, and unfortunately, that was due to lack of not only self care, but self awareness and knowledge that, that's why it's important to, take care of yourself because that
yep,
can happen. There have been women who have died from infections. And we'll probably get into this on the other stream, but
yeah,
for women, it's also like you have to be very careful. Um, Especially like I would say like probably one of the most dangerous things to a woman are toilets. Toilets can be a dangerous thing. Like you gotta keep your toilet clean.
yeah, no, yeah, and I think that's, yeah. I mean, and that goes into the, um, being like how we were talking about too, though, about women who are not being educated, not being taught, because the older women are failing them. The older generation is failing the younger generation in teaching these things. Um, and it's true. And then just taking care of oneself is vital, not just for um, your, obviously, with your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, but for your, obviously for your medical health. It's vital for us. So I do agree with you on that one, Harley. Um, but just to kind of well, hello, Sunkissed. Just to kind of wrap it up, though, did you have anything else you wanted to add, Harley?
um, I guess mm, what's a good way to wrap it up? Because I mean, we did talk about quite a bit, and we
Mm-hmm.
kind of went off here or there, but I, like your physical, mental, and spiritual well being all tie into one another, and that it's important to be able to take the time to yourself to be able to care for yourself because when you're get to a point where you stop caring for yourself, it's going to get very difficult to be able to care for others.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to be able to take that time to care for yourself.
I agree. And when we take care of ourselves and we are healthy, that plays into all of our relationships. It plays into how we treat our spouse. If we have any children, it plays into that, our family, friends, and strangers. And so I think that it is vital that, obviously we're talking about women specifically here. We always, of course, always goes to men as well. But for women to take care of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and the world of difference it'll make, for our attitudes, for our discernment, how we respond to people. All of that will change when we start taking care of ourselves. All of that changes. Our outlooks on life changes. And so, if anybody else does listen, I think that's probably, our biggest takeaway is take that time for yourself, take care of yourself. It's not selfish to do so. It's vital to make sure that we can have healthy relationships with those around us as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we are going to hopefully talk about our next stream, what we're going to be doing, and I just want to thank if anybody is still listening to this. I think we went off on topics and different things here and there, but that's what we do. But I think we kind of covered it. What do you think, Harley?
Yeah, I think we kind of got our point across.
Yeah, I think so. I think this was a good topic. This was Harley's topic. I'm going to give her all the props for this one. I think it was a good topic to have. I don't think it's talked about as much. So, my hat off to you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to have our next stream soon.
Yeah.
We kind of went on a bit of a hiatus for a while, so.
Yeah, life has kind of got in the way for a little bit. Maybe we can't make any promises. Maybe sometime this week, depending on our schedules and everything. But of course, we'll let everybody know. And until then, we'll see you guys in other chats and maybe in the Discord.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and we hope to see you guys next time.
Have a good night.